In the second video of Introduction to Analytical Chemistry, we are going to study chemical reactions and stoichiometric calculations, stoichiometric problems, limiting reagent, concentration of solution. Under that, we are going to study mass percentage or weight percent, mole fraction, molarity and molality. So the first topic is chemical reactions and stoichiometric calculations. When we perform calculations based on a balanced chemical equation, then it is called as stoichiometric calculation. Balanced chemical equation is a symbolic representation of a chemical reaction. If the reaction is not balanced, then the calculation which we do will go wrong. A balanced chemical equation gives us following information which is useful in solving problems which are based on chemical equations. First is, it indicates the number of moles of the reactants involved in a chemical reaction and number of moles of products formed. Second, it indicates the relative masses of the reactants and products linked with a chemical change. Third, it indicates the relationship between the volumes of the gaseous reactants and products at standard temperature and pressure. Now we are going to study how you are going to solve a stoichiometric problem. Stoichiometry is a calculation of reactants and products in a chemical reaction. There are three types of problems which are based on stoichiometry. First is problems which are based on mass-mass relationship, then problems based on mass-volume relationship, and the third one is problems based on volume-volume relationship. Now we shall study the steps which are involved to perform the stoichiometric calculations. When you are given a chemical reaction in words, then you have to write down the balanced chemical equation representing the chemical reaction. You have to mention the number of moles and their relative masses or volumes of the reactants and products below the respective formulae. Relative masses or volumes should be calculated from the respective formula mass, which we have already studied in the previous chapter, but we need to take the condition of standard temperature and pressure in account. And then we have to apply the unitary method to calculate the unknown factors as required by the problem. Now we'll just see two examples so that you understand the concept of stoichiometric problems. Here is the first sum. Calculate the mass of carbon dioxide and water formed on complete combustion of 24 gram of methane gas. The atomic masses of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen is given, which is 12, 1 and 16 unified mass. Combustion means burning in presence of oxygen. So first we will just frame the chemical reaction. So they are saying that carbon dioxide and water is formed, which means they are the product on complete combustion of methane. So methane and oxygen are the reactants. As I told you, combustion is the burning in presence of oxygen. So methane is CH4, oxygen is denoted by O2, so these two are the reactants, and it gives us the formation of products, that is carbon dioxide, CO2 along with water, which is having the formula H2O. The next step is we have to balance the chemical reaction. So check the number of carbon atoms on the left hand side and on the right hand side. So we have one carbon atom each on left hand and right hand side, so it is balanced. Now H atoms. On the left hand side we have 4, whereas on the right hand side we have 2. So we need to balance the hydrogen atoms on the right hand side by writing 2. Now check the number of oxygen atoms. On left hand side we have 2 oxygen atoms, whereas on the right hand side we have 4 oxygen atoms. So we need to balance the oxygen atom on the left hand side by 2. Now just check the balancing of all the elements present in the chemical reaction. We have 1 carbon atom each, 4 hydrogen atoms and 4 oxygen atoms. Next, we need to calculate the molecular mass of each of the compounds. First is methane. The formula is CH4. So carbon is 12 and 4 times hydrogen. The atomic mass of hydrogen is 1. So it is 4 into 1, which gives us the answer as 16 gram. Next is 2 times oxygen. The atomic mass of oxygen is 16. So 2 into 2 times 16, which is going to give us 64 gram. Carbon dioxide, carbon is 12 and 2 times the atomic mass of oxygen, which is 16, gives us the molecular mass of 44 grams. 2 times H2O. So 2 times into hydrogen atomic mass is 1. So 2 into 1 is going to give us 2 plus 16, which is the atomic mass of oxygen, and the answer is 36 gram. Hence, we can say that 16 gram of methane on complete combustion will give us 44 gram of carbon dioxide. But however, in the problem, they have asked us to calculate the mass of carbon dioxide and water formed on complete combustion of 24 gram of methane gas. So, if 16 gram of methane produces 44 grams of carbon dioxide, then how much carbon dioxide is produced when 24 gram of methane undergoes combustion? So we just have to cross multiply these two values here. Hence we will get 24 into 44 divided by 16, and the answer will be 66 gram of carbon dioxide. Similarly, if 16 gram of methane produces 36 gram of water, then how many grams of water will be produced by 24 gram of methane? Again, just cross multiply. So 24 into 36 divided by 16 is going to give us 54 grams of water. So this was the first example of stoichiometric problem. Now we move on to the second example. How much calcium oxide will be produced by decomposition of 5 gram of calcium carbonate? The reaction for the decomposition of calcium carbonate is as follows. So CaCO3 on heating gives you calcium oxide, that is CaO. So you are left with CO2, that is carbon dioxide. Next step is we need to see if the reaction is balanced. So calcium on left and right side, 1 atom, yes it is balanced. C, that is carbon, 1 atom each, balanced. Oxygen 3 on the left hand side, oxygen again 3, that is 2 plus 1 on the right hand side, hence it is balanced. Now we need to calculate the molecular mass of these compounds. So first is CaCO3. Calcium is 40, carbon is 12 and 3 times oxygen, that is 3 into 16, and the answer is 100. Next is calcium oxide. So calcium is 40 plus oxygen is 16, giving us the answer 56. Next is carbon dioxide. So carbon is 12 plus 2 times the atomic mass of oxygen, that is 16, is going to give us the answer 44. So we can say that 100 grams of calcium carbonate produces 56 grams of calcium oxide. But however, in our problem, they have asked us to calculate the amount of calcium oxide produced by the decomposition of 5 grams of calcium carbonate. So if 100 grams calcium carbonate produces 56 gram of calcium oxide, then how much of calcium oxide will be produced if 5 gram of calcium carbonate is used? So again we just have to cross multiply. So 56 into 5 grams divided by 100. So the gram will get cancelled of course, and the answer we will get is 2.8 grams of calcium carbonate. So I hope with this you are cleared with the chemical reactions and stoichiometric calculations and problems. Now we move on to the next topic, that is limiting reagent. When a chemist carries out a reaction, the reactants are not usually present in the exact stoichiometric amount, that is in the proportions which are indicated by the balanced equation. Whenever a chemical reaction is carried out, the main goal of the reaction is to produce maximum quantity of useful compound from the starting materials, which are your reactants. Always a large excess of one reactant is supplied to ensure that the reactant which is more expensive is completely converted into the desired product. So the reactant which is present in lesser amount gets consumed after some time and no further reaction takes place, whatever the amount left of the other reactant present. So the reactant which gets consumed limits the amount of product formed, and it is therefore, in simple words, limiting reagent. Limiting is the ones which is going to stop, and reagent means reactant. So when we consider a chemical reaction, we say reactant A combines with reactant B to give us some product, say BA. But out of these two reactants, if any of the reactants finishes off first or is utilized first, then of course the reaction is going to stop there. If one reactant is over, then how will the product form? So limiting reagent is that reactant which gets finished off or gets utilized first and the other reactant remains, because of which the progress of the reaction is stopped. Here is an example to understand the limiting reagent. Imagine there's a birthday party and you are going to give boxes to your friend which consist of 2 toffees and a cupcake. If I have 10 cupcakes and 25 toffees, how many boxes will I be able to prepare? Of course, 10. We have extra 5 toffees. But is it possible to make boxes with this extra 5 toffees? Of course not. So in this case, the cupcakes were the limiting reagent. Once the cupcakes got over, you were not able to fill up the boxes. So similar is the case. Once the limiting reagent gets over, reaction will not take place. Let us consider one example which will help us identify which reactant acts as the limiting reagent. We are considering the formation of nitrogen dioxide from nitric oxide and oxygen. So imagine we have 8 moles of nitric acid and 7 moles of oxygen. One way to determine the limiting reagent is to calculate the number of moles of nitrogen dioxide using the given quantities of nitric oxide and oxygen. Of course, which is the limiting reagent is going to give us smaller number of moles. First, we will do the calculation for nitric oxide. Nitric oxide was 8 moles and oxygen was 7 moles, right? So first we will start with the nitric oxide. So 8 mole of nitric oxide multiplied by 2 moles of nitrogen dioxide divided by 2 moles of nitric oxide. After calculation, we get the answer as 8 mole of nitrogen dioxide. Now we will calculate using oxygen with 7 moles. So 7 moles of oxygen into 2 moles of nitric dioxide divided by 1 mole of oxygen. And the answer we get is 14 mole of nitrogen dioxide. So if you compare the two answers, that is 8 and 14, so we know 8 mole is small and hence nitric oxide is going to be the limiting reagent while oxygen is going to be the reagent which is in excess. So this was all about limiting reagent. Now we move on to the next topic, that is concentration of solution. Majority of reactions which are carried out in laboratory are in the form of solutions. Therefore, it is important to understand how the amount of substance is expressed when it is present in the form of a solution. The concentration of a solution or the amount of substance present in the given volume of a solution can be expressed in any of the following ways. First is mass percent or weight percent. Second is mole fraction. Third is molarity, which is denoted by capital letter M, and the fourth is molality, which is denoted by small letter m. So first we shall study about the mass percentage. It is obtained by using the following equation or relation. Mass percent is equal to mass of solute divided by mass of solution into 100%. A solution is made up of two things, solute and solvent. Solute is the smaller part of the solution and solvent is the bigger part of the solution. For example, if I give you sugar and water, I'll tell you to mix sugar in water and we get a sugar solution. The sugar which we used was in smaller quantity and hence it is going to be the solute, and water which was used in larger quantity will be the solvent. Now we will consider this problem here to understand the mass percent. So the problem is, a solution is prepared by adding 2 gram of a substance A to 18 gram of water. Calculate the mass percent of the solute. So as I told you, 2 gram of substance A is going to be your solute and 18 gram of water is your solvent. So according to the formula, mass percent is equal to mass of A, which is the solute, divided by mass of solution into 100. Now mass of A is 2 grams. We know that mass of solution is the combination of solute and solvent. So we will add up 2 grams of substance A plus 18 grams of water and multiply it by 100. After calculation, we will get the answer in terms of percent, that is 10%. Next is mole fraction. Mole fraction is the ratio of number of moles of a particular component of a solution to the total number of moles of the solution. Now imagine we have a solution which is formed by dissolving substance A in substance B. So their number of moles will be represented as Na and Nb. N is used to denote number of moles. A and B are the substances which we have considered. So the formula for the two substances, so the mole fraction of A is equal to number of moles of A divided by number of moles of solution. So mole fraction of A would be Na, which are the number of moles of A, and I told you solution is a combination of solute and solvent, so we will write it as Na plus Nb. Similarly, if you want to calculate the mole fraction of B, then it would be number of moles of B divided by number of moles of solution. So number of moles of B is denoted by Nb and solution is a combination of solute and solvent, so divided by Na plus Nb. Next is molarity, which is denoted by capital letter M. Now molarity is the most widely used unit and it is defined as the number of moles of solute present in 1 liter of solution. So you can just put this definition in terms of formula like molarity is equal to number of moles of solute divided by volume of solution in liters. Last is molality. This is defined as the number of moles of solute present in 1 kg of solvent. Molarity is denoted by small letter m. Same definition you can put it in terms of formula. So molality is equal to number of moles of solute divided by mass of solvent in kg. Always keep in mind the molality of a solution is not going to change with temperature because the mass remains unaffected with temperature. In laboratories, a solution of desired concentration is prepared by diluting a solution of a known higher concentration. So the solution of higher concentration is called as the stock solution. Last topic under this chapter is use of graph in analysis. Analytical chemistry also involves deducing some relationships between two or more properties of matter which are under study. One of the example is the relationship between temperature and volume for a given amount of gas. Here is an example wherein we are going to study the measured values of volume and temperature for a definite mass of a gas. So here are some graphs. In the first graph, the points are directly connected. A zigzag pattern appears. What can you conclude from this type of graph? The zigzag pattern has no meaning to the result that has been deduced. A zigzag pattern usually results when there are errors caused due to no proper measurements taken in an experiment. Whereas if you observe this figure here, there is a smooth curve which can be called as the average curve which passes through these points. Now from this graph, we see that there is a straight line and you can conclude that volume is directly proportional to temperature. In this graph, volume is taken on the y-axis and temperature is taken on the x-axis. When you obtain a smooth curve, care should be taken that the plotted points are evenly distributed. Mathematically, even distribution is done as follows. So if you observe this graph here, each point draw a perpendicular to the curve. The perpendicular represents the deviation of each point from the curve. The positive deviations here are marked in red and negative deviations are shown in blue. The next step is we have to take the sum of all the red perpendiculars and all the blue perpendiculars separately. And if the two sums come to be equal or nearly equal, then the curve which is drawn shows the experimental points in the best possible representation, which shows that your experiment is successful. So this was all about your second chapter, that is Introduction to Analytical Chemistry.